This episode of the BeanCast is brought to you by Methodify by Delvinia. Get real-world customer feedback in hours, not weeks. Schedule your demo and get a free $20 Starbucks gift card. Go to methodify.it/BeanCast and methodify it today. Bandwidth provided by Recursive Squirrel Interactive. Visit them on the web at recursivesquirrel.com. Episode 584. We all know how it works. For Monday, March 16th, 2020, it's time for this week's edition of the BeanCast, a weekly discussion about the news and issues facing marketers today. I'm your host, Bob North. Thanks for joining us. Shut it down. That's the global mandate. Events are canceled, offices are closed, consumers are panic buying, and the ad world is struggling to find the right path forward in an uncertain future. Tonight we discuss the changes wrought by the coronavirus. Also balancing inventory and advertising during the crisis. What happens to the Cannes Lions? Whether this is the time for a brand refocus. Plus this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. That's the lineup. Let's meet tonight's panel. Thanks for joining us for this week's BeanCast. I'm Bob Norp, and with me on the panel for this evening, we start with the founder and principal consultant at the Idea Integration Company, Mr. Saul Colt. Hey, Saul.
Hey, Bob, I'm glad this show isn't canceled.
I'm glad this show is not canceled either, although we're running out of things to talk about. There's one topic that seems to be dominating everything. Now, also with us, we have the host of the Wendi Cooper Show, Speaking of Age, and founder of C-Spot Rum Productions, DR content expert, Ms. Wendi Cooper. Hi, Wendi.
Hey, Bob. Thanks for having me.
Oh, you're welcome. And finally, we welcome back the founder and president of Spark Media Solutions, as well as the producer of the CISO series, Mr. David Spark. Hi, David.
Hello, and it's great to be back on with you and Saul and a new voice, Wendi. So excited to talk about what is obsessing everyone.
Yeah, new to you. Wendy's a long-term guest of the show, but yes, you two have never been on the show together, which I don't understand how that happened, considering how many times I put you both on the program. Well, at least we've solved that problem. We've got other problems to deal with. Apparently, America and the world has shut down. Now, this is being broadcast or being recorded in New York. That's where I'm located. But it seems like the entire world has now shut down and is shutting down progressively more and more as the days go by. There's so many places to jump into this conversation. I'm going to start with events. So many people I know, especially people who come on this show, are completely beholden to having events to go to, being speakers, being on the speaker trail, doing new business at conferences. I know, David, you do a lot of stuff in the content arena. You know, it's just like this has put us all in a really bad way in terms of trying to drum up business and have interactions with people and do all the things that events are meant to take care of. I mean, South by Southwest, let's start with that. It's off the table.
Well, you know, all of this is shut down, but I think more the concern is it appropriate to even call someone about business now? I think that's kind of my main concern. I mean, I noticed last week when I was just doing sort of traditional email marketing, I send out 2 newsletters every week with, connected to my shows. And the one I sent out on Tuesday when everything was like literally coming to a boil, it got a half the open rate. And I was like, hey, what's going on there? And then I realized this is not what people are thinking about. People are obsessed with something else and you just can't communicate regular business. So more my concern is I don't want to come off as being an oaf or start talking regular business when there are bigger concerns and people are more obsessed with something else. And I mean, that's kind of
That's an
how I'm
interesting. That's
feeling
an
right
interesting
now.
take on it. Does everybody else agree with him that this is a time not to talk about business? Because I've actually taken maybe not a different approach per se. You know, I'm not out there
Well,
doing
I'm not saying
cold calls,
not
but I
talk
mean,
about business, but I'm afraid to do something that's insensitive. I think it's my main concern.
Yeah, so I'm so Bob, you mentioned events being canceled. I've lost 4 speaking opportunities, so that's quite a sizable amount of my income for the first 4 or 5 months of the year, and they're all vanished. I'm still in full business development mode, but like what you said, David, I'm being very sensitive in how I approach things. I never want to look opportunistic because that's really gross. I look at
Yeah.
I look at my Facebook feed, and it's either people talking about the coronavirus, talking about quarantine. A couple people are on vacation. You see the people on vacation, you're like, ooh, and then you see an ad, and you're like, oh. So when I'm having conversations with people, one, never pitching the I'm going to help you get out of this, because that's really gross. And I
Right.
saw a very popular I don't know if we want a life coach.
you're you're
Uh,
you're
sorry.
dropping
Yeah.
out there for a second.
Yeah, no, I hit a button by accident. I saw I'll use air quotes and say friend of the show. Not going to name who it is because that's not fair. But man, this guy was on Instagram stories about an hour after things got really ugly, and he's selling you coaching on how to get through the hard times and teach you mindset for disasters, and that made my skin crawl. So
Well,
I'm
I'm going to in a mild defense of this kind of behavior, which and again, this is a very mild defense,
Mhm.
but and you're going to see this happening. Like, fortunately, my wherewithal, I can weather a storm of bad stuff, and actually, given the way that my business operates, like we can do so much that's not events that actually my business is probably going to be fine. Ironically, through all of this, where everyone else is just facing either zero income or incredible damage, but people are going to get into a desperation mode, and they're going to start behaving in an effort to be desperate. I'm not going to say again specifics, but I had a call with someone of which I was trying to get some money back because we're not going to be using their services, and it was a very upsetting call. It was just very, very upsetting. And so I just kind of backed off, and I'm like, well, I'm going to probably lose that money, and that'll be the end of it. And I'm not going to worry about it right now. But people are going to get into desperate phases, either in pitching their business or just not having income. And I think the residual effects of this is what's going to be extraordinarily damaging to
well,
more
I think
people than the virus affects, which I'm plenty scared of the virus.
no, it's going to hurt people. More people will be damaged financially than physically. I agree 100%. And if your business is going to prosper in this, then there's absolutely nothing wrong with that, as long as you're not hanging the shingle that you're the pandemic expert of
Oh, well, I'm definitely
whatever.
not doing
Right.
that.
Yeah.
Right.
I have no experience there.
So,
Mhm.
so I have a different position on it, not overall, but because I own a consumer good product, I, I can't get it made, right? So my
Mm.
plastics manufacturer, which is in Chino, California, he is so busy because he's FDA certified, or yes, certified, so he can run medical equipment in the molds. I can't get my product. I can't get inventory for my small little business, right, to be able to sell that in order to have income. So yes, it's besides the advertising and the marketing world and all of that, and what do you do, and how do you sit back and because we all work on gigs. Saul, you do, I do. For 27 years, we work on gigs, and sometimes crap happens, and it really, really affects us. But like David is saying, there's the massive trickle down effect throughout everywhere for everyone. So I think it's really like Saul is, or David are saying, just, sit back and have empathy and let this pass, and help wherever you can. I saw a lot
I
of
think, by the way, that's a
people.
key phrase, help wherever you can, because if you can weather the storm, there are a lot that can't.
Right.
And like you said, help where you can.
Yeah.
Mhm.
If you're on Instagram, if you looked at stories yesterday, I saw a lot of my son, who is 29, his friends were posting in stories, "We're here to help. If anybody needs anything, if you have elderly people." I mean, they're just jumping in, the younger people, and saying, "We're here to help. You need groceries, whatever it might be."
Yeah, I mean, I saw that too. A young woman was offering to essentially go grocery shopping for the elderly because the elderly really should not be leaving the house to go to the grocery store,
Mhm.
because being that they are most susceptible in the most severe ways as well. Another issue that, by the way, we see in all economic downturns, which is just sort of generic of economic downturns, is the first time there's a sign of an economic downturn, Bob, advertising is the first budget item to go.
Yeah, and that seems to be the way it's rolling out. Everybody in the media space is starting to put forward the fact that ad budgets are being cut, for
I
a
think
number
The
of
I
different
think
very
reasons.
this is
first
a
thing always to go. And on the reverse side, when when the when the economy starts to uptick, to turn back, that is the first thing to come back.
See, but I also think it's product specific or brand specific. So I absolutely agree with you, except for the fact that with no sports and no things, there's tons of money being refunded. So that's all cut, but whatever. But like I'm pretty sure Peloton, who's probably going to end up the winner out of all this coronavirus stuff,
Yep.
they've got to be tripling their budget right now, and their
Yes.
ads haven't changed a bit, so that they're not capitalizing on it. But man, I see them 25 more times than I saw them
There's going to be a lot
2
of
weeks
remnant.
ago.
Yeah, there's going
Mm.
to be a lot of remnant because people are ditching their media, and the true DR media agencies are that are truly direct response, right? Where they go in
Mm.
and they go after the remnant stuff, and that's what direct response really is all about, is really cheap remnant media.
Well, that helps.
And
That helps everybody with stuff in the can. But one of the big
Yeah.
stories that came out this past week is that the production companies are all shutting down. That they're not going out and shooting spots. They're not putting their people in harm's way. They're letting off stringers. How do you get a commercial made during this time? Is it just getting a little bit more creative and doing a lot of text and working with iMovie?
Oh,
They
I
should
think
just
it's just repurposing footage that you already have and getting creative in the edit bay. Honestly, that's what
Really,
I would
just
Yeah,
do.
come to.
honestly, no. I mean, again, that probably falls under the well, this is not something to worry about. There's other ways we can handle that, and there's maybe stock footage and a voiceover talent we can handle. We can hire at this point to handle a lot of these things. But I would also mention, I think all companies need to look at what their ad buys currently are, because I think a lot of these event companies have forgotten to turn off their ad buys on Facebook and LinkedIn and on Twitter, because I'm seeing advertisements for events that are happening April, May, June, which bad timing to be advertising.
well,
Yeah,
so
I've been seeing
off.
I've been seeing a lot of theater type programs being advertised via programmatic on. I get Sling to do my cable, and it's I'm getting Blue Man Group ads, and I know that Blue Man Group, along with everything else in New York that's involved with the theater community, has been shut down completely. So
Right. Well,
it's
they need to
well,
turn off these buys. They're not being turned off.
right.
but that also shows, and maybe not the big brands like you guys are talking about, but in times like this, you can really see who is managing social media and who is automated social media and
Exactly.
automated buys. Because there's been some rather tone deaf things going on, just because they probably just queue up 30 days worth of stuff and don't look at it, or nobody thought about it, or
Well,
all
well,
Yeah,
sorts
then
they
of
that
things.
was my point, Saul, is that you
Mhm.
all need to go and take a look at your buys and see
Yeah.
if some tone deaf crap is running right now and turn it
Mhm.
off.
Well,
Yeah.
that's if they can even figure it out, because sometimes it's just stretched across so many different places, that
Yeah.
Wendy,
I know.
that's pretty hard to do.
Wendy,
But
you
you know
brought up
what? And
something.
like you said,
Wendy,
a
you
tone
brought
deaf.
up something that I
Sorry.
saw. Yeah, I saw that. I had seen this article already, but I mean, to that point, there was what KFC was doing in the UK. They had brought back the finger licking good campaign, and they had to pause it. I mean, they were smart enough to look and see this is not something that we need to be putting out into the airwaves right now. And I
I
think
want to play devil's advocate with that for a second. And I know that I constantly push some wacky ideas on this show, but and I'm going to sound like a hypocrite because I already said don't be opportunistic with your advertising. But there's such a really interesting opportunity for KFC, and if you guys do it, send me a check for $1 million. But their whole campaign should be finger washing good, and roll out with that. There you go. Thank you. Good night.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
wait,
There's some free consulting from Saul.
okay, yeah,
Right.
so you guys, realistically, when you think about comments like that, Saul, what I think as a producer, I think, well, that's absolutely ridiculous. I mean, the finger licking good thing is there's a campaign already in the can, ready to go. Now what? They're going to go shoot a whole new,
No, but
finger wash
they're
campaign.
playing a pun on their own campaign that everyone knows.
Yeah,
Well, they'd
but I
have
mean, to
still
Wendy's,
show somebody washing their fingers with Kentucky Fried Chicken all over their fingers. I mean, for to have a true continuity in the washing your finger thing. But Saul's very funny.
I don't think there's going to be any continuity when we come out of this. I think the advertising world is going to look so very, very different. I don't know what it's going to look like. I'm not going to say I have a vision for it. I just think that so many brands have been really, really raked over the coals, and deservedly so, for some really awful emails and things like that. And like, why every brand did I ever gave, and I know this like has been shared a million times on Facebook, so I'm just, I'm repeating it, but I got so many emails from companies I don't even remember ever dealing with, just telling me their response to COVID. Like, that wasn't necessary.
And we, by the way, we've run into this before, but some organizations need to do it. Like, I'm getting emails from organizations that, like My Health Club, like DoorDash, like Grubhub, like these are ones that we do want to know how they're handling this.
Yeah, but I got one from an Etsy shop that I bought something from a really long time ago, just letting me know that they're going to be working from home and response time may be longer. Well, I can't even imagine what I bought from these people. It was completely unnecessary. And it goes to what you were saying, like you people should really think twice before they send stuff. Like,
hey Saul and Bob, and you know who we didn't hear from, or who I didn't hear from and I should have heard from, is Amazon. Jeff Bezos. Everybody's touching everything everywhere.
Amazon has put a statement on their website, but they have not reached out via email, as far as I know.
Amazon's business is going to go through the friggin' roof. Not like it hasn't been doing really well, but geez, home delivery is going to go insane.
I don't know. I would prefer to go to the store and touch my own stuff than have it delivered to my home. This is my mindset. Than to have it delivered to my home that's being picked and packed by somebody sneezing all over it in the warehouse, and having a million hands touch it. I would rather. I know that doesn't mean that the right bread I want.
I don't see it your way. I see if something comes in the mail, if I'm very concerned about it, if someone sneezed on it, I've got disinfectant wipes at home and I can wipe the damn thing down.
Yeah. That's if we're quarantined. If we're not quarantined, I think it's healthy to get out and go for a walk, go to the store, wear gloves.
Well, let's
the social distance is what we've been discussing.
Let's talk about the opportunities that are available out there as far as which businesses actually stand to benefit from this. And I know this is callous to do, but there were a few articles out there this week that were examining things like esports, considering that the sporting leagues have canceled all their seasons. What do you think, Saul? Does esports get a chance to really shine and showcase what's possible, and maybe even take a little bit of the market share away from the regular sporting world?
I'm probably not the target market for this because I don't really get esports, the whole idea of watching other people play video games. I totally know that it's huge and it's here to stay, and it's just like I'm just not their target. I don't think it's going to set the world on fire, maybe just because I'm too far removed from it. I think the real winners are going to be, like I said, Peloton. I think all the food delivery services are going to go through the roof, which is ironic.
Anything that's delivery is going to do very well. So I'm contrary to your statement, Wendi. Anything that's delivery based will do extraordinarily well.
Yeah, but I think the food delivery services are going to do great. But it's also ironic that they're cannibalizing the restaurant industry with like crazy margins and stuff like that. So it'll be interesting to see a year from now, restaurants may not even have tables or have much smaller footprints, and it'll be all.
But these food delivery services might be the thing that keeps these restaurants generating any kind of income.
You guys, if things are shut down, let's just say that's the worst case scenario, right? Because that's what happened in Italy. That's what's happening in France. That's what's happening around the world.
I think
Let's
we're
just
a week
say
behind
if things
Italy
are
right
shut
now.
down, small businesses are shut down, restaurants are shut down, just like you had mentioned at the beginning when we first came on the call. If they're shut down, there's nothing to deliver.
Mm-hmm. Well,
Yeah.
so you got Peloton and streaming services and Amazon, and there's the winners.
And
Because
I think
Amazon will just have everybody live in their warehouses
I
and never leave like they do already, basically.
exactly. But I also think that from a B2B standpoint, I think from the voice first world, which I now love, I think there's a lot of stuff that can be done. You're not touching anything. You're finally just using your voice for everything. You're activating everything with your voice. You don't have to. I think it could be a little bit of a winner for anybody that's on the other side of that's in the emerging technology and working towards, establishing voice. I
One
think
of the
it's
things I found really interesting, and if this is too much of a left turn, just tell me and we can ignore it. But I don't know if you guys have followed the NBA because they've been canceled with like nothing to report on Sports Center. They're doing very different kinds of like news and programming, and they were talking about I'll probably pronounce it wrong, but the force majeure clause, where like you can basically just kill everything as
yeah.
a god
Hurricanes, floods, blah blah
orchestra.
blah. Yeah.
In the NBA contract, if they do the force majeure clause, they don't have to play the players for the rest of the season, and it nullifies the collective bargaining agreement, so they don't have to live up to any automatic salary cap raises and things like that. So we're not seeing the NBA maybe for the rest of this season. There's a chance that it may not come back for a few years because there'll be a lot of unhappy players and unhappy owners if they actually pull that pin.
Well, there's going to be a lot of unhappy sponsors. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
talk about, the advertising world, but I gotta have to ask my son about that. He's a freak for that, so he'll know the answer.
I've got one last thing I want to
Interesting.
cover.
Can't you drag him on the show right now?
I've got one last thing I want to cover before we move on to the next topic, but the upfronts are now canceled as well. And that's pretty much been something that we've been talking about for several years about is this the last year for the upfronts? Are the upfronts going to continue? Will this finally be the nail in the coffin on the upfronts, at least the big dog and pony show type upfronts, or is this just
Yes.
you think it's over?
Yes,
Mm-hmm.
I think what this is going to do is it's going to be it's the trigger that makes them do the pivot to digital. I mean, they can do everything they do at the upfronts except for the partying and the schmoozing and all of that stuff. But look at what the essence of the upfronts is all about. Why
But
can't that just be done
but
the
the
way they're going
upfronts,
to do it this year?
yeah, the upfronts are about the partying and the schmoozing, though. I mean,
Well,
it's just
so is
like
every
it's so much of
conference.
it is about that. Can that be replaced? I mean, it's the same question we've been asking about online. I'm sorry, about conferences.
And about GAN.
You can't move conferences entirely online because you don't get that chance to meet people and have dinner with them and get to know them and have relationship and go forward. And
Yeah, but I think it's a little bit different with the upfronts and and buying and securing all of that media for the year. I think it's a little bit different. I think they can do it, their way they're going to do it this year. All I'm saying is it might work, it might not work, and maybe it will change everything, but it's the catalyst that's going to have them test it and then find out if, they can do that again year after year.
well, we're going to
You know,
talk a little bit about inventory management and the balancing act between trying to get your product promoted and trying to keep your product stocked for certain products that are kind of running off the shelves right now, like toilet paper and hand sanitizer. But we'll get to that in just a minute. First, it's time to talk about our sponsor, because we do have a sponsor on this show.
That is awesome.
Methodify by Delvinia, and it's going to give you another chance, another opportunity to get a $20 Starbucks gift card just for checking them out. But first, you got to listen to my ad because I've got a lot of great things to tell you about them. Let's talk about advertising for a second. Have you ever looked at an ad and said to yourself, how did this get approved? Or maybe even something like this. Someone has got to be fired over this. It happens more often than it should, but the important thing to remember here is that it doesn't have to happen to you, because you have at your fingertips, at your disposal, Methodify by Delvinia. Now, Methodify empowers you to collect real feedback from your actual customers within hours to give you your insight teams and senior marketing professionals the information they need to power better decisions. Now, we all know asking the wrong questions to your target market, or worse yet, asking the right questions to the wrong people, is the same as not gathering information at all. Now, Methodify will help you to solve these problems and quickly give you more actionable insights to help you avoid costly marketing mistakes down the line. Now, recent decisions that Methodify has empowered include things like helping select which comedian would be featured in a national television spot for a major bank. They did that in hours. It was great. Testing digital creative before it was launched for a top 5 fast food chain. They handled that. New pricing models for a software company that you probably interact with on a daily basis. The use cases here are endless and valuable because the insights are coming from actual customer feedback within hours instead of weeks. And let's face it, now's the time to do it. People are out there. They've got the time. They want to do research. They're going stir crazy in their houses. Now is the time to do research. Find out more about Methodify and set up a demo. Just go to methodify.it/BeanCast. That's methodify.it/BeanCast. Yes, we are indeed telling you to methodify it. And as a way of saying thanks, every BeanCast listener who signs up and completes a demo will receive a $20 Starbucks gift card just for your time. And heaven knows we all have plenty of time at the moment. So again, that address is methodify.it/BeanCast. And we thank them very much for their support of our program.
You know, I bet KFC is using Methodify right now to see if they can get away with that finger washing good.
That would be a good use case.
Great idea.
You could find out if anyone from KFC is listening. This is your perfect opportunity to find out whether or not Saul's idea is a good one for your marketing campaign. Well, Clorox and other disinfectant makers are struggling to capitalize on this situation going on. They have a run on their products. Store shelves are empty. They've got Amazon not being able to keep it in stock. They're canceling their ad campaign. Their big problem is they're trying to get enough inventory into the channel to meet demand. At the same time, you have other products that are going through the process of the other side of the equation. They're trying to figure out, how do we keep our products moving off the shelves? Or how do we take advantage of, for instance, airlines. They're experiencing a lot of struggle right now because so many flights are being canceled and travel is being restricted. And they're trying to keep some measure of operation going at the same time. They're trying to do their advertising, but it's such a mess right now, Saul. I'm not really sure what the solution is. You know, trying to find a balance between your inventory and your advertising. What's your suggestions in this time for people out there?
So, first thing is brands have to be a little bit more human, and I know that some of it have it in their DNA and some of them don't. So forget the inventory challenges for right now. Let's just talk about, you mentioned the airline industry. I had a bunch of flights booked and I canceled them, and they waived the cancellation fee, but they wouldn't give me a refund. And I'm not going to out anybody. It's like, it's not worth it or anything.
Yeah,
but
none of them are doing that.
You have a lot of people you could be outing on this episode. So
because the world is against me, Wendy. It's
sorry.
but it's like so they're holding close to $6,000 of my money, and and I only have till December 31st to use these flights. So.
Which, by the way, and God willing, this problem could go on for quite some time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but they could have really earned a lot of bonus points by refunding half the money, giving something, but they're holding on to all this money that for all we know, people aren't even going to travel. Like the bug may be gone. So we're basically fueling these businesses where we really should be fueling small businesses. So as far as inventory, I'll let you guys jump in and I'll sort of comment. But that there's so many ways brands, especially big companies, could do really human things and help people in this time. And I haven't seen any of them really do it. I've seen some people do it. I haven't seen brands do it.
So I think I'm going to wear two hats here. One hat would be for the advertising side of it, right? So where My one son that lives in Florida, he actually works indirectly, definitely with the cruise industry. So that's really interesting because I have a fear of now him, being affected, you know, in that trickle down effect. But from an advertising standpoint of production or advertising, okay. So if I was like Royal Caribbean or I was an airline or I was Clorox or I was advising them or whatever it might be, it's easy enough to take and repurpose footage. So the biggest thing is, okay, how do we not spend a lot of money because we're not able to use this this campaign that we thought we were going to have, and we're not generating the revenue. Okay, so what do? It's to your point, Saul, is they become human. Take it, have that beautiful cruise line going down the Danube River, but the voiceover says something completely empathetic as to what is happening, right? Use that time to do that and to reach into the consumer's heart and say we're human, we understand, and I'm sure more and more brands will do this because really it's kind of like, how are they going to use that media that they can't get out of? Because a lot of times you can't get out of that media that you bought.
So I don't agree with any of this. And here's what you should do. The cruise ships have become a huge source of the problem. And,
that's not necessarily true.
They've become petri dishes for problems. Now, what is going to probably happen very, very soon is that the hospitals, God willing, this won't happen, but the hospitals will become overrun and that they will need locations to create beds for people who need care. Could the cruise ships become these mobile hospitals where they could take care of people on the cruise ships themselves? If the cruise ships want to turn around, I would do that.
That's a brilliant idea.
I think they've been talking about that already, that the cruise ships would act as an isolation.
What they should do. And
but David, they have been talking about using cruise ships for the isolation. And they already
but,
did that
but
with the
I think the bigger point that Wendi makes is it's not about cruise ships. It's more about if you haven't, if you're being affected negatively by this situation, you have an opportunity to go out and be honest in your ad using the same footage. I mean, you can go out
All
and
you have to do is change your voiceover, right?
But you better hire the best copywriter in the world because there's such a fine line between
there's so many landmines. Yes.
Yeah. I want to introduce a crazy idea, and it's
crazy idea number 2 from Saul Colt. Go.
Well, I thought I just had crazy idea number 1.
But you think about how advertising has changed over the last 10 years from physical representation of people in ads. You see same-sex couples, you see mixed race couples, you see same-sex couples with children and stuff like that, and you see a lot more minority representation in ads. When are we going to see an advertiser just slip in people wearing gloves, people wearing a mask or something, not make a big deal about it, but highlight the new reality? And I think that if anybody is brave enough to do it, and I'm not saying you should, because I think the KFC idea is brilliant. This one I'm about 35% on, but I think there's an interesting.
The mask thing, by the way, there's a lot of advice not to be wearing masks because it actually doesn't do the protection you want, and actually our healthcare workers need them.
Saul, do me a favor. Go get a bucket of KFC, and then shoot your greasy fingers, and then send that to me. Send all of that to me, and we'll create that campaign all by ourselves and send it over to KFC.
Okay, I'm on.
Seriously, it's that easy.
Well, I don't even have to go get it. I'm surrounded by buckets of KFC. Everybody's been hoarding fresh food. I went with what had the shortest line.
One fact that came out to me in kind of bold technicolor was that engagement is soaring on Instagram ads at the same time that buyers are being canceled left and right. And it shows me that because people are locked up, they're getting online, they're using their televisions more, they're actively participating in media consumption. It seems that this is the time to be advertising something. You know, like
Yes,
even
but
if your
Bob, it's
inventory, if
what
you're,
you advertise.
well, that's the
It's what
thing.
you
If your inventory is low and you can't meet demand, advertise something. You know what I mean? If you have
Be part of the solution.
right, and if
Part
your
of the solution. That's why I
inventory
said
is high and you
be the
can't move,
floating hospitals.
right, and it's just like, and if your inventory is high and you can't move that inventory, you still got to be out there doing something. It's almost like this shutdown is so short-sighted. It's the same as it always is whenever there's a crisis, but now it's amplified tremendously because of the impact it'll have on the economy. It doesn't make any sense to stop advertising because we're still consumers. As everybody pointed out, we're still buying stuff from Amazon. We're still ordering food for delivery. We're still out there doing stuff like that. We're still planning for the future. There's a lot of
I think though it's very product specific. So the only ads I'm seeing on Instagram is a lot of the weird Chinese drop ship stuff, like, you know, neck pillow and this and that. I'm actually getting a lot of home stuff, a lot of pet stuff, and Peloton ads.
Well, right. The ads are really going down, but the engagement is going up. People are clicking through and they're buying stuff. You know.
Okay, so would it be okay, Saul and Bob, because you both have one, would it be okay for me as a brand, as EasyGo Pro as a brand, for me to say something like, you don't really need as much toilet paper if you use our product, right? Because it comes out easier. I mean, and cleaner. I don't know. Would that be okay?
I don't think you need to mention toilet paper. I think you stick with your regular message because people are so focused mentally on toilet paper and things like that I wouldn't even mention toilet paper.
Okay.
I think I wouldn't.
We all know how it's used.
We all know.
You do,
toilet paper.
yes?
Yeah, we all know how it's used, but I'm just leveraging. I have a toilet stool, David, and it's similar to that other brand, but it's
Go ahead and promote it.
I could definitely have some fun with that on Instagram.
Go ahead. You can say EasyGo Pro.
Oh, okay. Thanks, Bob. So anyway.
Well, the other big news this week was a lot of conversation about Cannes. Cannes has not, as far as I know, the Cannes ad festival has not canceled yet. When is it? It's beginning of May. And they're still kind of on the fence about whether to have it. It's in France, so it's not like they have much choice if the country shut down, but they have an alternative date that's scheduled for October. They've actually secured an alternative date. Now, there's a lot of conversation about how the festival would be much, much different if it became a late fall, or I guess it's early fall. I'm not sure where in October, the end of October falls, but in terms of seasons, but it's the fall. It's dead set in the fall. You'd have to be wearing jackets at night. It wouldn't be the summer extravaganza that it is now. A lot of people were wondering whether it would be the same festival. I really don't see why it would be any different, but maybe you guys could weigh in.
By the way, Bob, let's just point out, nothing's going to be the same anymore right now.
Right, of course.
Nothing's going to be the same. So the fact that you can do anything, the fact that they can have anything, and potentially have a live event just pushed back a few months, fine, I think.
Well, but
I think everyone's going to be thrilled. Everyone's going to be ecstatic to go back to live events.
And it's going to be too cold, though. If they do it in the fall, it'll be too cold for people to have sex on the red carpet. Like,
do they actually do it on the red carpet?
Somebody got caught like 3-4 years ago, like 2 a.m. Someone was having sex on the red carpet or something like that.
It was filmed for all our pleasure.
I've been listening to and been a guest, thank you, Bob, on the BeanCast for 10 years. I think it's 10 years. And every year there's conversation about when are they going to get rid of it? What, who goes to that anymore? Oh, those stupid awards, blah, 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 blah. So who does anybody really care what happens there? I mean, are you going, Bob? Are you going, Saul? Is anybody going? Was anybody planning on it?
I wasn't planning on it.
I don't have a client who wants to send me there. It's just like I don't have an agency around me willing to buy my ticket. Yeah, I mean, it's mostly about the boondoggle. It's mostly about getting a lot of FaceTime with people who are important in the industry. I think that it's a valuable conference from the business deal standpoint and for making your client look really good in a very public, very global
think
setting.
it's a beautiful cultural event of our of what we do, and of our world and marketing and advertising, and I think that's awesome. For them to shift it to October, they seem to be very prepared for this. This is like kind of like the one organization, because it wasn't until May, and then, oh well, if this isn't cleared up, we'll shift it to October, and we have Plan B. Right? They have Plan B.
I actually am a big fan of Plan B. I mean, not the drug, but
October's beautiful in
I'm not
France,
going to wade into
especially the
that
south of
territory.
France.
But Plan B sounds like a great plan to me. I mean, October sounds like a great time to have
Yeah.
this event. It would be more focused on the actual learning opportunities. It would be focused more on the actual awards being judged. It would be more about the ads. It would be less about the drunken parties. Maybe I'm putting a little too much credit on October, thinking that it's still not going to be the same type of event. But it seems to me like that would be a great thing for that event, for it to move
I'll
to
tell
October.
you what we'll do. We'll all meet at our Airbnb, the home in Magenta, Italy. We'll stay a few days. We'll go down there. We'll go down to Cannes, or up to Cannes, and have some fun. And beautiful, beautiful time of year in Europe is October. It's beautiful.
So, how do we feel about Cannes, just before we move on? One last thing about it. I mean, is Cannes, I hate to ask this question because I say it every single year, and every single year we have the same type of conversation, but I'm going to say it again. Is Cannes still relevant? Is it something that's, I mean, we've already had so many of the brands, so many of the agencies kind of rumbling that it's not important. Now they're all back in again, so it is important. I'm not really sure where it stands right now in the hierarchy of needs.
Let me ask this question, because I'm not as familiar with it. Does this event bring the industry together during that one period of time? Just answer that one question. Forget about everything else. Does it bring the physical bodies there all at one time?
Yes.
A certain level of
Just the
bodies.
elite.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So meaning not Saul Colt.
No, Cannes is. I don't give a moment's thought about Cannes, so
Neither
that's
do
why
I.
I'm being quiet.
But so the reason I ask, because in the security industry, the biggest event every year is RSA, and every single year, people complain about the show. They complain about it's irrelevant anymore, yada yada. The same nonsense goes on. But regardless, it is the gravitational force that brings everybody in the industry to San Francisco for 1 week for the year. So much business can be done. So, for example, I was talking to one company that they bought a whole floor at a hotel. They set up 150 meetings in a week, and I said, it costs a lot of money to get that hotel room on the floor. And I said, if this event wasn't here and you didn't set up these 150 meetings, how much would it cost you to do the equivalent? He goes, well, I'd be flying my salespeople all over the country, and the cost for the air, the flights and the hotels and everything else be way more expensive than this. So my only question is, if it is still a gravitational force, then it is hugely important. If it is not a gravitational force, then no, it's not.
Well, it's more about the awards, isn't it? I mean, they have
Forget about the awards. Is it a gravitational force?
It is it does.
Yes,
it
it
does
is.
draw the global ad community together, and it's the only event that really does that. So I think that's a really great way to look at it, David. I mean, the fact that it is a gravitational force, it becomes relevant.
Can
just
a
in
lot
and
of
itself.
business happen around it? Then yes, it's still
that I
Even
have
if
no
the
idea.
awards doesn't mean anything. If it still draws the attention and people come, then that's all that matters.
Well, the last topic of the evening is there was this interesting article that I read. I'll have the link in the show notes. I forget where I saw it, but someone posited that maybe now is a good time to start reimagining what your brand stands for. And, the idea of doing a complete brand refresh or repositioning your brand in the middle of the coronavirus, fiasco going on right now doesn't seem like it's a real smart idea to me on the surface, but there's a lot of wisdom in taking this time to re-examine what your brand does stand for and see whether or not you're out of alignment with the new global reality. What do you guys think to that idea?
So I don't see it as like a brand refresh. I see it as a mindset refresh. Are you going to do something charitable in these times? Are you going to be exploitive? Are you going to be quiet? Like I said before, I think the secret for really what every brand should be doing now is be more human, start again building an online community, and you should be talking to all people and not just customers. And I haven't seen a whole lot of brands doing this. So, when people hear, what does your brand stand for? A lot of people think of like mission statements and vision statements and core values. I think all that stuff is nonsense. It's really, how are you going to react when people need you? And I think that this is absolutely the time you should be thinking about that. But I haven't seen any brands, even the ones I love, I haven't seen anybody really stand out yet.
I don't think anybody really knows at this point
Yeah,
what's
agree.
right and what's wrong. I think we're in a holding pattern, at least for a little while, to figure it out, because you can become, you can say, okay, I'm going to shift my narrative and I'm going to be more empathetic. I'm going to be more focused on, the coronavirus made us here at XYZ realize that, life is short. And so we've taken a new perspective at what, you could go on this whole explanation of why you're shifting your thinking and changing your brand narrative. But at the end of the day, or perhaps this is what will happen, is we never forget 9/11, we just don't live in it anymore, right? We don't never forget SARS, we just don't live in it. We never forget Ebola, we just don't live in it. We want to forget it, kind of, right? You want to move on and be normal again.
But I said brands shouldn't be opportunistic, and I don't see this as opportunistic. But what if, one of the, like Purell or somebody said, for every 20 bottles we sell off the shelf, we're going to donate 5 to an assisted living center, or toilet papers, or all these things that are in
those guys don't need to worry because the demand is so ludicrously off the chart. I think it's
but this is about what the brand stands
That's the
for.
narrative, right?
Yeah, so it's not about sales, it's not about this, it's like, show that you're not a bad person.
Yeah,
I don't think Purell is showing they're a bad person. It's the the only people that might be seen as a bad person are the people who are putting ludicrous markups on the Purell. They're generating as much product as they can right now.
But have you heard any comment either way, good, bad, or indifferent from these companies? I haven't.
So Saul, doesn't this go back
to? I don't think I need to hear it. Like, I just want to know that they're generating product.
Mm-hmm.
I mean,
I don't know.
The city of New York has generated their own hand sanitizer.
Yes, and now they're making
demand is so high.
Now, Prada or somebody is making their own hand sanitizer. I don't know. One of these, these haute couture brands are making their own hand sanitizer in France. I forget who it is. L'Oreal. I don't know who it is, but somebody. But at the same time, Saul, isn't that really like saying, wouldn't it be awesome to see a beautiful Purell commercial that basically says, because of this, we're doing this for the world?
I honestly, I don't think Purell needs to say anything. Why do they need? Their product is solving a concern. I don't think anything more needs to be said.
Well, here, one second. Let's look at this a little bit more.
Sticking to the topic.
Let's make this a little bit more deep in terms of the conversation, because we can look at this as an opportunity to do something kind of technicolor in an ad, or we can look at it as an opportunity for the brand to look at themselves and say, we have not been good stewards of the resources that are available to us. We need to do something better for our employees. We need to treat our employees better. We need to treat our customers better. We need to, it doesn't need to. No, wait a second, David. We're not saying, becoming something, not becoming something in an ad. I'm talking about, becoming something in the DNA of a company, to look at what our brand stands for. And it's just like, and move forward with that mission, as opposed to just taking this as an opportunity to maybe do something nice for people as a result of the coronavirus. I mean,
a great example.
The core product itself is doing something nice. I mean,
we're not slamming Purell. We got to get off of Purell. That's not what this is about.
A different example. Okay, a great example is publishing companies have been dropping their paywalls on just coronavirus coverage. So that actually is really important. They're saying this is how we make a living. Yeah, this is how we make a living, but we know this is important. We want you to survive, so we're doing this. So that was a decision that they made that 6 weeks ago, if you were to say, "Hey, let's drop the paywall on NBA," they would have laughed you out of the room or something like that.
And it's a great tactic for this time period. It's just,
It's categorical, right? It's like Saul said earlier. It really depends on the category that your brand is in. So
Yes.
you have to analyze that, look at that, and say, okay, how can we help, or how is this affecting us? And it might be B2B, it might just be a consumer good. Who knows? It's so different for every single brand.
Yes, and again, some brands are directly impacting and have involvement. So like any hand sanitizer, and then there's some brands that are so not involved that it may be a stretch for them, and they may have to reassess or just see how they can help in the situation. And it could be like we said at the beginning of the show, it could be the young people on staff are helping out by delivering groceries.
I
Like,
think
it
what it
could
is,
be as simple as that.
what it is, it's a recognition that every brand is involved with this. And I think that's the
Right.
main mission. It's like, even if your product has nothing to do with solving or helping or mitigating the coronavirus, it doesn't mean that you don't have employees that need to be treated a little bit differently than they were last month. You know what I mean? It doesn't mean that you don't have customers and consumers out there who need to be treated differently than they were last month. And I think, understanding that and understanding that the new reality has come upon us, and now is the time to reimagine what our brand is, what it means, reassess what we stand for. That's an important self-reflection activity that I think needs to go on right now.
Well, so
Don't
a great example, or another great example of brands sort of doing right and wrong is, go back to the NBA. I read a list the other day of I forget who had it, but it was basically which teams are paying their concession stand employees while the lockout or while the shutdown. And 4 or 5 teams have a player stepping up and covering it. 5 or 6 or 7 teams are paying the people at least through March, but there was at least 7 or 8 teams that were just like, sucks to be you. And so that you should reimagine what your brand stands for. And the most important thing any brand could have is an opinion and stand for something. It doesn't have to be a popular opinion, but you should have an opinion of some kind.
Well, isn't that the definition of a brand? Really?
It
At the end
really
of the
is.
day, it's really what do you stand for,
And what's the
basically.
experience of the consumer? What's the
Exactly.
experience
Yeah.
when it hits,
Yeah.
when the rubber hits the road?
Uh-huh.
Well, with that, it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul. But before we get to that segment of the show, I do want to take this quick opportunity to thank my guests again and allow them to each do some shameless plugs, starting with Saul Colt. You can find him at theideaintegration.com. That's the home of the Idea Integration Company, where he comes up with fantastic ideas like finger washing good. So tell us what's going on in your world, Saul.
You guys are going to be the first to hear it. I'm launching a virtual event. It was going to be a live event, and it just didn't work out because of everything that's going on. But this is the topic of this event. So we're really going to be talking about building a personal brand and sort of, sharing your personal brand. And I feel that, without getting too opportunistic, if everyone's working from home, you're going to have to work way harder on making sure your personal brand is out there so that you actually get career advancement and things like that. So the event I'm doing with a couple friends of mine, all of us who do not have books, we're not authors. So it's called the No Book Tour, and you can go to nobooktour.com to check it out if you're interested. I'd love to see a couple people from the BeanCast there. And beyond that, please, if you have projects or any consulting that I can help you out with, a lot of my projects have been canceled or gone away. So I am very eager and anxious to speak to anybody. So please reach out at theideaintegration.com.
And next up, we have Wendi Cooper. You can find her at wendicooper.com. That's Wendy with an I. Tell us what's going on in your world, Wendi. What would you like to promote?
Thanks, Bob. Let's see. I do just want to wish everybody to stay safe and healthy. But at the same time, I'm taking this time. I just came off of a year, as if you listen to the BeanCast, where I beat cancer for the second time, and so I have kind of a new lease on life, and my attitude is very different. I just dropped my very first podcast episode in 6 months, so it's an awesome interview with this author. Her book is Sacred Rest. I think everyone, since we have a lot of time right now, you should listen to it because it really deals with rest like we don't even think about it. So that's awesome. That's the WendiCooperShow.com. The Wendi Cooper Show, speaking of age, where it's conversations with remarkable people over 50. And soon Mr. Bob Norp will be on the show. Saul was episode number 1 about a year and a half ago. But also, I do a lot of D2C consulting. I am really, really, really loving the creative end of voice right now. So that's where I'm throwing all of my skills and my energy, doing a lot of use cases for authors and books and things like that for Amazon and Google and Amazon Skills and Flash Briefings. And thanks to our good friend Emily Binder, who I love. So anyway, that's what I'm up to. And you can find all about me at wendicooper.com or cspotrun.com. You can see all of my direct response portfolio.
Hey, Wendi, I went to wendicooper.com, and it's just saying website coming soon.
Okay, so that's really interesting, and thank you for telling everyone that's listening to the BeanCast that that's not working on your end for some reason.
Yes, well,
that's weird.
I just went to it before the show and it worked, so you might have typed in the wrong thing, but it's just like...
You can try cspotrun.com, the letter cspotrun.com, and maybe HTTPS or I don't know.
Oh, but you know what it is? You have the www issue. So if you type in wendicooper.com, it doesn't work. But if you type in www.wendicooper.com, it works fine.
So that's great. So everyone listening, you better try it and make sure it works on your computer.
Yes. Put the www in.
Thanks, David.
And speaking of David Spark, you can find him at sparkmediasolutions.com. I'm pretty sure, given his comment there, you don't have to add www in, but you can if you want to. Tell us, David, what do you want to talk about?
People can check out sparkmediasolutions.com. That's my core business. But honest to God, my business has drastically changed to focus almost exclusively on cybersecurity, and that's why I run my new media channel, CISOseries.com, where we produce 2 podcasts, one called the CISO Security Vendor Relationship Podcast, and the other one called Defense in Depth. We have done...
And CISO is spelled CISO, as in Computer Information Security Officer. Chief Information Security Officer.
Yeah, and up until last week, we did our 15th live event in 13 months, but as everyone is realizing, and we have postponed all our future live events, and it's unfortunate for all of us, and it's a bummer. And anyways, if you're in the cybersecurity community, we'd love to have you on board and get involved, but if not, it won't be of any interest to you. I'll just say that.
Okay.
So cybersecurity people, we want you over here. It's such inside baseball that, it's only for those people who love this field.
I always say that mine's such inside baseball, but I have lots of people who listen to the show who have nothing to do with advertising just because they find the conversations so interesting and the topic so interesting. And I think cybersecurity is something that is...
Well, it's touching a lot of people these days. I know that.
Yeah.
And sadly, what we realize, and here's my big advice and warning to people, is you are going to get a lot of phishing emails that say COVID or coronavirus in it. Do not fall for them. They can cause some nasty, nasty damage, most notably ransomware, and that is the last thing you want among all this other nonsense. You don't need another headache on your head.
Amen. Amen, brother. As for me, for more information about me or the show, visit thebeancast.com. There you can find a complete show archive. You can find out how to consult with me, and you can even find out how to advertise on the program. So check it all out at thebeancast.com. And now it's time for this week's Fair, Fail, Foul, a rundown of the best and worst of advertising, marketing, and public relations from the last week. First up, this is an idea that springs from the mind of Saul Colt. Now, Saul didn't come up with this, but this is the kind of idea that Saul, I imagine you would come up with something like this. But There was a website called isitcanceledyet.com, which specializes in telling you whether or not your event has been canceled yet. And now it's become just a site of everything canceled, but it's really humorous. It's well done, and it's all done by a game creator, a physical game creator, not a video game creator, but a physical game creator, as a way to leverage the crisis and promote his game. I thought this was brilliant in the way that it was executed, because it's not taking advantage of the situation in a bad way. It's just making people laugh and have a good time with the bad situation that we're all facing.
Yeah, so it falls into all the sort of the touch points of something going viral. It was quick, it was relevant, it was constantly updated, and people actually cared about it. So good job on this guy. I did not have the idea, but I thought it was kind of cool.
Well, the fail of the week, though, goes to Anomaly, Anomaly being an agency, a global agency. They had just lost an account right before the coronavirus hit. They were trying to keep everybody on board, and then the coronavirus hit, and they instantly let go a whole bunch of people and issued across-the-board pay cuts to the entire operation. And said it had nothing to do with the account hit. It was entirely coronavirus. It seems like this is a PR spin for something that they were planning to do already, and they just did it with very poor timing. Now, I don't blame a company for being in bad financial shape and needing to let go of people, but I don't know, Wendy, this seems like it was really bad timing and not really considerate to the people who are being affected. I mean, this is a really bad time to do this.
Do we know who's the decision maker over there that did that? I mean, how old is he or she?
All I know is that the pay cut across the board included all executive staff. But what I didn't like was this idea that, because
to blame it on the coronavirus, blaming it on the loss of the
right. It seems like it's just a PR maneuver to make us seem like, oh, we're actually healthy, but we're making this healthy choice because of the coronavirus. And
they're victims. Number one, they're just basically saying we're a victim just like everybody else. So if there's any funding out there that we can get, no, I'm kidding. But I think a lot of businesses are thinking like that, right? So if we claim that it was the coronavirus that really hurt our small business or whatever we're doing, that maybe there's some special funds available to people eventually that could be had. On the other side of the coin, I'm thinking it was just a bad decision by upper management to blame it on the coronavirus. You lose Panera Bread. I'm sure it's Panera Bread, right? It's Panera.
Yeah, they lost Panera.
I'm sure that it was a big account for them, and they probably just thought, hey, let's just blame it on the virus. But it's typical to lose an account and let people go.
There's a rumor floating around that they've already scheduled 2 more mass firings, one on Thanksgiving and the other just before Christmas.
Yeah, just to complete the trifecta for 2020?
Yes.
Understood. Now, the foul of the week I'm giving to the White House communications team and their efforts during the virus crisis. There are no words to a situation where you're up there in the Rose Garden talking about how you need to socially distance from people, that you need to not shake hands, that you need to make sure you're not spreading the virus. Meanwhile, the president is spitting into the microphone and then passing the microphone off to other people, shaking everybody's hand as they come up to the podium. And it's a known fact that he was around 3 people who have been infected with the coronavirus and hadn't gotten tested as of that time. Now, of course, he has gotten tested now, and he says that, and they say that he's clear. I mean, it's just like we'll have to believe them on that. But this seems to be the most ill-conceived communication effort in terms of trying to reassure the public. David, weigh in.
Our president, I'm not a fan of his. I think everything that you said is spot on. The fact that he has not announced, I'm getting tested right now, and you should too. And here's how you do it. Because the more people who know who know what their status is, the better we have information and the better we can tackle this. The fact that he did not say anything to that effect is highly distressing. And the fact that his behavior reinforces, don't worry about it. And the fact that he doesn't seem to care, that he cares more about his numbers early on than he does about people's health is sad. And the sad fact that his vice president is just kissing his butt when it is known that he has made a lot of mistakes is also very, very distressing as well. I am hoping that other leaders will come out and show some more fortitude and actually lead the country better than our current president is.
Well, I'd like to say something, setting all politics aside. Sorry.
Yeah, like you're going to
No,
do
it has
that.
something to do with leadership right now. He's not leading. He isn't.
Right. So it was just, I was sitting here and I was watching it. I was working on something and I was watching that whole press conference. And all I could think in my head was, what? The journalists are passing the microphone around, right? So they're passing that microphone around. The president and his cohorts are up there and they're shaking hands, except for the one intelligent guy that did the, the wing thing. They're adjusting the microphone. How it was like watching a bunch of imbeciles up there not knowing, like like the brain and the words were not connecting with the humanoids that were there, or if they are human at all. On the other hand, I do have to tell you this. If you saw the photograph of the Brazilian guy in a Make Brazil Great Again, right? The guy that was the positive guy. There's two people to either side. Well, there's President Trump, there's Mike Pence, and then two other gentlemen. The one to the right is the son of the man to the left, and they were my partners when I had a diet product in 1997. I'm not going to say who they are, but they are like the Kennedys of Brazil. Okay. And the other son was also there with them. And so it was like, I was like, oh my gosh, right? So it does trickle down, and I've been trying to get a hold of him and find out what's happening. But it just it's just the whole thing was just so bizarre to me, right? And I don't believe for a minute that President Trump tested negative for the coronavirus.
Well, we'll find out soon enough. But for now, that's the end of this thing. So have a suggestion for the list or just want to discuss it, comment online, use the hashtag #FairFailFoul. That's #FairFailFoul. It's like I've never done this show before. Well, that does it for this week's BeanCast. If you'd like to subscribe to this podcast, visit our website at thebeancast.com and click on the subscribe link. If you're an Apple Podcast listener, we've also provided a direct link to our listing there, or just search for the BeanCast in the podcast directory on the Apple Podcasts app. And whichever podcast directory you use, when you subscribe, please leave us a review. Got a comment? Have a question? We'd love to hear from you. Just send your emails to beancast@gmail.com. Opening theme was performed by Joe Seibel. Closing theme by C. Jax. Thanks for listening. I'm Bob Norp. We'll be back again next week. Hope you'll join us then.
You know what I mean? It's like if it's, you know what I mean? I don't know, man. Just like, okay, it's like, you know what I mean? Like, it's like totally like that. It's like, I don't know, like if it's, it's like, you know what I mean? Yeah, it's just like kind of, it just seems like it's just like almost exactly. It's like exactly. Yeah. You know what I mean? Exactly.
Cool beans.